Alright people, here we are on the very next day. It's about midday. We're gonna head up to the Uinta Mountains. Just got the lift kit installed yesterday. If you haven't watched that video, check it out. So this is the post-lift installation, post-suspension replacement, whatever you want to call it, video. I'm gonna throw up kind of the part one of this before I change the suspension next. So watch that real quick, check it out, and then I'll get right back to you. All right, so here we are in the old rusty pickup, and this little truck is just about to undergo some pretty major modifications, suspension modifications. So as a comparison, before I swap out the suspension, I thought I would do a little before and after video of how tired and wore out this little truck's poor suspension is. So we're gonna rally up this dirt road and then over to Moon Lake, and then we'll talk about it after we put the new one on. How good of a suspension is Old Man Emu Dakar suspension for these old trucks? That's what I'm trying to determine here. And as a matter of comparison, from experience with Old Man Emu, of course made in Australia by ARB, tried and true suspension. What I can tell you is, having put the 2.5, 3-inch lift on my 100 series Land Cruiser, my 2000 year model, affording me the ability to put the 315 tires on it, man, suspension difference was night and day. Absolutely, it's so much more firm, so much more sporty, responsive, and it can carry a pretty significant load when you get those heavy springs in the rear. So when you get your roof rack loaded up, all your cargo in the back, it handles it really nicely. Okay, and then as a matter of comparison, also on my 80 series Land Cruiser, my 1997 model, it still has the stock suspension, which is what, 23 years old now. So that suspension is sad, I can tell you. Sad. I mean, it's just like super lazy and sloppy and going around corners and handling, you know, cattle guards and off-road or whatever. It's saggy and sloppy and loose and pretty bad. So I have pretty high expectations of what this Old Man Emu Dakar suspension is going to transform the little mini truck here. I'm sure it's going to be freaking awesome. But in addition to the suspension, we're putting these Toyo Open Country mud terrains, MTs, on. So that's going to make a huge difference. These are 33 10.5 15s. So we're going to air those down when we come back out and do some suspension testing. But yeah, as far as this truck goes, I mean, on this 1986 model, which is what, 34 years old, it's a pretty old truck. I do like that the suspension is quite supple. Obviously, it's really soft and everything, but of course the shocks are shit. So, and I had intended to just extend some shackles in the rear, but just to kind of retain the softness of the rear springs, at the same time leveling out the the body. Right now the rear end sags pretty low. But upon inspection, apparently I broke one of the springs. So one of the rear leaf springs is broken, one of the top leaves. So it was time. So yeah, it doesn't perform worth a shit. I mean, it's super sloppy and tired, but we'll see what the new torsion bars and the new leaf springs are going to do to this thing. But I suspect it's going to be pretty freaking awesome night and day, and you know, give me that lift that I need. So more to follow. We'll see what happens. What I would like to do is try to get this bad boy airborne over a cattle guard or something somewhere before we swap out suspensions, but we'll see if I can find one. So stay tuned. Our primary mission today is some fly fishing. You betcha. This is a pretty primo little trail though. Okay, so real quick, we'll talk about things I encountered during the suspension installation, and then some opinions of how it's working out now. Okay, so I wish I would have maybe kind of documented this while I was installing the suspension, but take it for what it's worth. I'm trying to recall all of the things that you're going to want to keep in mind. I don't even have my damn camera mount, so gonna hold it. That sucks. First thing off is, okay, where to start is, of course, get some PB Blaster penetrating oil or whatever kind you want to use, and try to go around underneath the truck and put that stuff on. I would recommend at least 3 to 4 days ahead of time. I actually did it on this one maybe 2 months ahead of time. At least a month and a half at least, probably 2 months. So, and then maybe go in and put a second treatment on there, and that's really going to help loosen everything up. And pretty much the bolts and nuts that weren't welded to themselves after 34 years of installation, the bolts and nuts that could come off, which were the shock bolts and all that, they came off with ease because of the PB Blaster, I think. The shackle pins and the leaf spring forward pin bolt, no go. There's no chance you're going to get those loose. You're not going to get to reuse them. So if your kit doesn't come with a new bolt for the front of the leaf spring, the forward end of it, you're going to want to add those to your kit. Fortunately, Kurt tossed those in the bag for me and was looking out well for me, so appreciate that, Kurt. Okay, for all of the parts that you're going to not be able to turn and get out with your wrenches and ratchets and sockets, you're going to want a cutoff wheel at a minimum. Hell, if you've got a torch or a plasma cutter, perfect, you're sweet, you're set. So cutoff wheels, you're going to want some 4.5-inch cutoff wheels that aren't really worn out, because they're going to need some throw in there to be able to actually cut into those bolts. So anyways, a couple of new ones of those. What else to tell you about the suspension, lift, installation? Okay, another thing that's important, I think, is on the bushings for the leaf springs. The package tells you to not lubricate the outer parts of the leaf spring bushings. Instead, put those in dry so that part grips into the frame of the truck, and then the pin is what gets lubricated. Okay, so you can grease those up, preferably with molybdenum type of lubrication. But use whatever you got, right? What else? Let's see. Okay, install one leaf spring at a time, leaving the other side intact. Seemed to be pretty beneficial and pretty helpful. It worked good. Okay, also the torsion bar nuts, the torsion bar bolts, tension bolts, have a jam nut on the top. So you're going to want a big ass wrench to get that off, 2 wrenches to get that off and separated. I got ravens up here and deer crossing the road. Those aren't ravens, those are buzzards. I managed to do the whole thing with just one jack stand and a center block and the little rolling jack, so that was good. That worked out. What else? Also, this is the biggest snafu thing, and you're probably going to think I'm crazy, but Old Man Emu sends their torsion bars stenciled left hand and right hand, painted right on them. And I'll be damned if they didn't send me 2 right hand freaking torsion bars. Sure as shit. So they're indexed. They've got a flat on each end. One of the splines is flattened on each end to make it so you don't put the wrong freaking one on the wrong side. But sure enough, they sent me, I swear to God, they sent me 2 of the right ones. So I had to bust out the angle grinder, 4.5 inch cutoff wheel, and grind out one whole spline in the right spot so that it would line up with the tensioner, so it could be installed. So that was a total pain in the ass. What else? Not a whole lot else I can tell you about the installation. If anything else comes to mind, I'll let you know. Okay, so as far as opinions on the suspension and the new tire combo, these are 33 inch 10.5 R15 Toyo Open Country MT mud terrains. I'm a Yokohama tire guy, made in Japan, but they did not have Yokohamas in 10.5 inch wide, and I really wanted that kind of more narrower stance, and also a little bit less mass to have to sling around with this somewhat already underpowered truck. It has the 22RE, electronic fuel injected 1986 version, and so I already was pretty leery of how underpowered this truck is and how underpowered it was going to be on these tires. And I did just climb up this hill back there, but before I tell you about that, the first few miles I drove it around, I was pretty surprised that it didn't seem too much more underpowered than it already has been. I would guess that the tires I've been running on it are about 30-inch tires, a bit worn down from 31s probably, and so it's already underpowered as it is. So I was pretty worried that I was going to throw these 33s on there and it was going to have a real hard time even just driving down around town. But to my surprise, it handled it almost as good as the old tires, which doesn't say a lot, but yeah, so far it's not going to be a big problem cruising around town, so that's a big plus. Now, coming up that last hill right back there, it was a pretty steep grade. It was only a quarter mile long and a little windy, but sure enough, dude, as soon as I got on that hill, I had to shift down into second gear. So it's going to be underpowered for climbing steep grades, that's for sure, no question about that. But that's to be expected, and the beauty of these old trucks is, you know, they got a low range, and you put that sucker in low gear off-roading, and even with tires this big, we're going to find out here in a little bit when we get off-road, but even with tires this big, that low range is so low that you should be able to still pretty well climb and off-road pretty well. So yeah, it sits so freaking tall, you can definitely feel that, but also first thing I noticed was just cruising down the road here is when you get up to speed about 20 or 30 miles an hour, and there's big stickers on these tires that say rollover hazard, and then I guess this truck doesn't say it, but you've got this little warning up here. So yeah, these trucks are known for, or had been known for, you know, being a rollover hazard. So it's even more prominent now. So here we are, 35, probably more like 40 miles an hour. I can tell you, you freaking get to swaying on this thing too much, and it doesn't have a lot of body sway, but it just feels like it wants to, the rear end wants to kind of slip around a little bit and take you for a ride. So more to follow on that. My opinion of that might change, but as far as a junior who's going to be driving this truck, my 16-year-old, I'm going to have to take him out and give him some lessons on how not to end up rolling this bad boy, you know. So that's really the preliminary things. It's a lot quieter. I think that I was getting a lot of noise from those squeaky ass old springs, so things are a lot quieter now. That's pretty nice. I've taken it through some right on the road, some gutters and stuff, and took them at speed, and it's pretty firm, but it's not body jarringly firm. So yeah, it feels good, feels sporty, feels responsive. It's not sagging, and oh man, it's just what you would expect, right, out of a new suspension. So let's get up here to the off-roads and see how she handles that. Boy, this river is finally perfectly primed for fishing. That is the mighty Uinta River. So real quick before I air down and we go off-road, let's talk about turning. This is fully cranked, fully turned. Never mind some of the creaking noises, but as far as rubbing goes, that creaking has been there. I've been meaning to address those, but I've got all new steering parts for this thing, all new tie rod ends and ball joints, so that will take care of some of that squeaking. And then what I may end up having to do is change out the control arm bushings, but after that it should be good to go. But as far as rubbing goes, that's full turn on the wheel. Pretty tight turning radius. I think that rubbing is the mud flap. Not the mud flap, the dirt flap is what I bet it is. Let's take a look. But it doesn't feel structural on the body, so that's a good thing. Oh, easy peasy. Probably just that right there. No problem, we'll trim that down. No problem at all. I was thinking it was one of these flaps in here, but no, looks good. So, it probably rubs at full stuff and whatnot. I'm sure it will. But the other thing we got to check for is at full stuff here, whether this clears the lip and whether we got to roll that lip in or not. But we will find out. So let's air these bad boys down and get to wheeling. An entire glove box full of nothing but a bunch of shite. Good hell. Of course, you got to have your napkins on hand. Always got to have spare napkins on hand, but we sure the hell don't keep chili packets. God, I don't know who in my family is always keeping freaking chili packets, ketchups and shit like that. Anyways, yeah, a little bummed out. Don't seem to have a tire pressure gauge, so that's great. We will be eyeballing it. We're just gonna air down a little bit. So in here with all the fuses, I always keep, I may not have a tire pressure gauge, but I always keep some valves. So, as an old school guy, I have never invested in these air down dealy whoppers, so I just take the valve core out. But it's probably smart to have an extra valve core on hand in case that sucker goes flying into oblivion. Now, when I'm looking for maximum traction, I probably will take it down to about 10 or 9 psi, but just to try to get a more comfortable ride for regular off-roading with big rocky boulder trails, you can go down about 12 or 15. Maybe even like 18, just depends on what you're doing. So I've still got a lot of road miles to get back to town before I top this off, top these tires back off. So we're not gonna go too low. We're just gonna call it good. So just installed this little bad boy, bolted it down. Pretty stoked about that. And now that the 100's got the 100 Land Cruiser, my other truck has a onboard ARB air compressor for the lockers. I can transfer that compressor to this little truck. We will have a freaking tire pressure gauge and an air compressor and the whole works. So should be all hooked up. Man, never underestimate the improvement in the ride quality of airing down your tires. I'm telling you, man. In the Subaru, Land Cruiser, truck, car, whatever. If you're gonna spend more than 5 or 10 miles off-road on a trail like this, just save yourself from rattling out all your fillings, and it drastically improves the ride quality. Still though, it's a roughing it. There we go, low range. Oh yeah, baby. She's still super low. Low enough anyway for what we're doing. I'll talk to you when we get up to the top. About stiffness and firmness. This isn't a super rugged trail, but it's not very smooth either. And I can tell you that even with the tires that are down and everything, it's a bit of a, it's not what I would say a rough ride. It's not a super smooth ride, but those rear springs are about as supple as what I would expect. I mean, I think if you put a Rancho lift kit on here, as you know, like a 6-inch, some sort of big monstrous lift kit, you're gonna have some pretty stiff springs from what I've seen around. So it's not super smooth, but I'm not disappointed with it at all. I think it's about as good as you could hope for. It's not dissatisfied in the slightest. So it's pretty comfortable, really, all things considered. So, okay. You know, and in reality, I mean, everything should soften up within the first year, I would say. Things should get a little more mellow and tamed down. especially if you drive it around with a pretty big load in the back for a little while. That's my hope and plan anyway. That sweet ass campsite. We're up here in the Alpine now. Finally stretch your legs out a little bit. Soaks up those big old hits. Rallying. Soft, actually, at least at high speed when you're not going over super bumpy stuff. Pretty soft, pretty smooth, all told. All right, well, Chipeta Lake is, it's a good bit further, so Post Lake is right here. Nice campground, beautiful trout lake there. We're just gonna pull in there, string up the hammock and enjoy ourselves for a little bit, get a little rest. But if you wanna see what Chipeta Lake's like, check out this other video over here. Here we are. What? You don't keep a hammock in the back of your truck for just such an occasion as this? Dude, hammock instantly improves quality of life 1,000-fold. Look at this sweet little spot right here. Well, what is there really to even more to tell you about this truck? I'm just rambling on at this point for sure, but that's that. That's a wrap. People's garbage. Perfect. Yeah, I don't know what else to say for now. Performance freaking awesome. It's great. It's pretty sporty. Soaks up the hits and isn't too teeth rattling, jarring, and it should get better over time. Should get more supple. So okay, what's next for this truck? Let's see. Next for this truck, being that I've got the 100 series Land Cruiser, it's pretty midway through some pretty substantial upgrades. And the GS motorcycle. I don't have a lot of time or resources more to spend on this truck for the time being. I think we'll make one more video for this where we're actually climbing with it, crawling up some stuff, and maybe we'll even try to air it out a little bit. Gotta find the right spot. And we'll do just one more suspension performance video for it and call that a wrap. But as far as what's next for this truck, the gearing, I'm pretty sure we're probably gonna have to change the gearing. It'll be way better. And if I change out the gearing to lower gears, I'm sure I will put probably a cheap Lockrite rear end in there and maybe leave the front open for the time being. But I'll bet that's not for another year or so down the road. We're just gonna have to get by with what it's got. But the next thing that I do want to do is take off that rear bumper, build one, build a front bumper, put a winch on it, and put some off-road lights on it, and then put a radio in it, a ham radio with an antenna. Get the high lift jack mounted in the back. Maybe on the rear bumper I might do take the tailgate off, and I saw a pretty badass tailgate replacement tire rack the other day on a Ford. Looked pretty legit, so I might go down that path, we'll see. And then just finish off outfitting it with recovery gear. Other than that, I think it's good to go. I think after I get all that heavier stuff mounted into the back, it'll kind of bring that rear end down a bit, as well as giving it a few months. I think it's going to tame down quite a bit, level things out a good bit, so we should be good to go. So that's about it for this edition. Thanks for watching and following along. And if you like any of my other, if you like 4x4 stuff, off-road stuff, truck stuff, mostly all Toyotas, I don't do Jeeps. Nothing against Jeep people that I'll admit to. But yeah, here on the Adventure Channel, you just never know what you're gonna get. Maybe some fishing, maybe some off-road motorcycle riding, maybe some long-range touring on the motorcycle, maybe some off-road building, off-road truck building, some camping. Oh, and also we just got the RV camper, so there's going to be a lot of stuff forthcoming with that, but you never know. Everything that we do on this channel pretty much pertains to an adventure of some sort, so I know it's kind of a variety channel, but one form or another, it's usually pretty enjoyable out here wherever we go and what we're doing. So hopefully you'll stick around, subscribe, and so forth. We were going to go over there to Chipeta Lake, but weather in the Uintas up here, you can count on every afternoon storms and rain showers settle in, so it's like, let's just not go up there. And this is going to fit just nicely. So catch you on the next one. Check out the other videos in this series and on these playlists. So thanks for watching.